Good morning, everyone. I'm back up here again. So y'all know what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to stand, and we'll turn in our hymns to page 50. We're going to be singing "Sing to the Lord with Cheerful Voice." Cheerful voice, serve Him with joy, His praises tell. Come ye before Him and rejoice, and know the Lord is God indeed. Without already did us make, we are His flock. He doth us feed, and for His sheep He doth us save. Oh, enter in His gates with praise, yea, the approach unto His Him, and bless His name. Wait, for it is seemly so to do. For God the Lord is ever good, His mercy is forever sure. His truth at all times firmly stood, and from age to age endure. All right, y'all. I gave you some critique on day one. Look how many people we got out here. We can sing a little bit louder than that, okay? So let's step it up a little bit. Let's turn over to page 20. We're going to be singing "To Thee I Lift My Soul." After which we'll have Mr. Ken Esters come up for the opening prayer. Page 20. I trust Thee, O my God. Let me not be ashamed, nor let my foes triumph for me. Let none that wait on Thee be put to shame at all. But those that without cause transgress, let shame upon them fall. Show me Thy ways, O Lord. Oh, teach Thou me Thy paths, and in Thy truth lead me Thyself therein, Thy teacher be. For Thou art God that dost to me salvation send, and I look on Thee all the day, expecting to attend Thy tender mercies, Lord. Remember, pray I Thee, and loving kindnesses, for they have ever been alone. My sins and faults of you, do Thou, O Lord, forgive. After Thy mercy, think on me, and for Thy goodness pray.
Pray. Father, great God in heaven, just thank you so much for your blessings, the beautiful weather we have here. Father, we thank you for the message that we've received, and we ask that you bless the message that we're going to receive today and throughout the rest of the feast. Father, we ask you to protect us as always, and we just pray in Jesus Christ's name that you will protect us. Amen.
All right, for our announcements this morning, my dad, Mr. Stan Roberts.
Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are, Thursday. Believe it or not, we've had a good feast so far. I hope you're having a wonderful time. Few storms out this morning. It was a little different out seeing, but all these palm trees need rain too. So it was good to see that poor little stray kitty cats that are out there at my condo. I guess they're rogue cats. They're standing there looking in my window every single morning for a couple of mornings. I'm like, no, you're not going home with me. But after about the third day, I said, there's got to be some cat food in here somewhere. And finally, somebody had set the cat food under the kitchen sink up on a little shelf, and I found it. And I was like, aha. So we went out and poured the little bowl. So I have two friends now that are there every morning. And with it pouring down rain this morning, there's a little awning over the back door. So they were right there dry. And I took a picture and sent it to my kids this morning. I said, look here, this little guy here, he's wishing he could come inside. But anyway, I fed them this morning. They were happy. And I looked out right before I left. They're curled up on the bench out there asleep. So I think they're going to be okay. I want to give some announcements here this morning. A couple of things here. Registration desk is out in the front there. Please fill out a registration for your family if you'd like, so we can sort of plan for next year. By the way, we had the opportunity this year, as we've done every year, try to pencil in for the next year here so that we ensure that we have this facility. And I wanted to let you guys know that they came to us, and every year they seem to go up a little bit in price. And we negotiated this year to hold the price for the next 5 years if we would sign a deal to say that we would be here for 5 years, and we did that. So we're locked in at least for the next 5 years here. So I'm excited about that. The luau that we was going to have last night, I think we made the right call, because it was sort of getting terrible weather right when we were supposed to have a luau last night. And all we did, the Austin group decided to just keep the deposit there, postpone it till next year, and so they're going to come back and do the luau next year. So I'm thankful for that, and that means we'll have that one activity next year. I was really looking forward to that because it's a brand new activity for us here, but we'll do it next year and give you something to look forward to. Please be sure to turn your cell phones down for the services today. The sign-up sheets, as I mentioned yesterday, are all out there on the front table for all the activities that we have, and the Lost and Found is back there as well. There's a donation box back here on the sound table if you'd like to make donations there. We use those for necessary things throughout the feast, or as the feast is over with. Sometimes we have things that just pop up in the feast unexpected. One year out in Myrtle Beach, I think it was Myrtle Beach, a guy's starter went out on his car, and he went down there and wanted $500 for a starter. And so we all pitched in to help him get a starter and get him back home, Please also make this offer here to everyone. If you need counseling or anointing or counseling for baptism, be sure to see one of the ministers here. There's several ministers here. If you can't find one, just see me or Tom Griffith, who's sitting up here on the front row here. And there's several other ministers here as well. Please remember to take all your belongings each day so that when they reset the room, and we will be setting up tonight, so they're going to completely rearrange this room tonight. I mean, to get ready for the raffle, and I already see the raffle prizes are stacking up over there, and I'm sure it'll be a fun night. So be sure to take all your belongings, because immediately after services today, they're going to begin tearing this apart, getting ready for the raffle. Today is the seniors luncheon at the Wicked Wheel at 12:30. I wish they'd name that something different. I don't know. I just hate the name of that, but the Wicked Wheel. The address is in the brochure, but it's located on Middle Beach Road, which is Hutchinson, east of Applebee's, which is just right up here, if you know where Applebee's is, toward the Walmart on the side of the road. Tell them you're with the ICG when you arrive, and direct you to the seating area that they reserved for that. And I know that was already several signed up for that, and they should be ready for you there. As I mentioned, tonight is the feast raffle. Tickets can still be purchased at the registration after services and tonight, beginning at 5 p.m. Be sure to write your name on the back of the tickets years ago, we used to have these these little tickets, and they had numbers on them. You had to read the numbers out, and people would be talking and conversing with one another, and it'd take you forever to read those numbers out, and people would not be paying attention. We found out it's better just to write your name on the ticket. We pull a name, we call the name out, and it goes a lot smoother and a lot more quickly. So just write your name on the back of the ticket and put it in there, and we'll hopefully call your name out for one of the prizes. This is the only way you'll know that you are the winner. If you have prizes to donate this morning, you can place on the donation table over here. It's already full, so maybe beside the donation table, we'll take care of it. Volunteers will be busy setting up between 2 and 5 p.m. If you have last-minute prize donations, please be sure to drop them off before 5 p.m. That way we can make sure they have a place in the sacks and everything that you put the tickets in, so that we have time to set up. Drop off next door at the entrance of Majestic 2. Let me read that again so that we have time to set up. Drop off next door at the entrance of Majestic 2. Is that the prizes, Judy? Okay, so while they're setting up, just drop them off over there at Majestic 2, which is the room next to us here where the Sabbath school is. Doors open at 5 p.m. for you to find your table and prepare for tickets. This has always been a big hit for the church here in Panama City Beach. And the prize area will open at 6 for you to drop off your tickets. And they will start calling winners at 7 p.m. So the whole thing will get kicked off at 7 o'clock. The Shell Island cruise, we rented a big giant boat. I think it'll hold 120 folks. And we already have quite a number of people signed up for it, 56 to be exact. We purchased 75 slots. So a few more, about 20 more people just to fill up the slots that we bought ahead of time to reserve the ship. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, if you've never been out on a boat, and it's plenty of room to walk around and go up on the sun deck and enjoy the breeze on your face. And you also get the opportunity to see some of the dolphins out in the Gulf, and it's a lot of fun. So the Shell Island cruise is tomorrow. So if you haven't gotten your tickets, please sign up for it today. And I think you'll enjoy the ride. It's always been one of my favorites. And every year I ask Judy, are we going on a boat ride? Because I want to go out on the Gulf and see the water. Before I sit down and shut up here, a few announcements regarding prayer requests. Those that I'd mentioned to you yesterday, keep those on your prayer list. But also, I don't know if many of you know Bill Burchell and his wife, Tim. They are here they came down to the feast this year. They normally attend up there at Branson, but he's been under the weather since he got here. They actually had an accident in a rental car on the way. Somebody backed rear into their car and had to go through that. He's been feeling bad. She's not feeling good this morning. And so they asked for prayer that you would remember them. They've not even been to service. I've even seen him since he's been here. So hopefully he'll get well and be able to come back and attend with us. And then also little Isaac Smith is running a little fever. I think they thought he might have some problems with his ears or whatever, but he's running 105 fever this last night. And we certainly want to remember him, a little guy. He's, how old is he now? 19 months old. So you know how that feels. It feels like your world's coming to the end when your child is sick. So please remember him in your prayers, and that he gets well and gets back to normal, and mom and dad will feel a lot better too, I'm sure. And we'll certainly be praying for that. So that's all the announcements that I have this morning. Before we have a split sermon again today, I'm looking forward to this. The first one will be by Mr. Terry Bohannon. And before that, we're going to have Aaron Pryor come up and sing In God's Eyes. And then Terry will come up right afterwards, first part of a split sermon.
This is a Willie Nelson song that I found just a couple weeks ago, actually. It shows you about how long I put this off. I had about all year to do it. So. Boy, straight into that lot. I can't see anybody out there anymore. Never think evil thoughts of anyone. It's just as wrong to think as to say. For a thought is but a word left unspoken, and in God's eyes He sees it this way. Lend a hand if you can to a stranger. Never worry if he can't repay. And for in time you'll be repaid 10 times over. And in God's eyes, He sees it this way. And in God's eyes, we're like sheep in a meadow. Now and then a lamb goes astray. But open arms shall await our returning. And in God's eyes, He sees it that way. But open arms shall await our returning. And in God's eyes, He sees it that way.
Greetings, everyone, from the Campbellton Church here, just north of here. Several members here today. I also visit the Atala Church, and I know most of you know the Atala group. Richard is the minister there, but I visit there once a month. And while I'm there, I always give them a question to answer before I come back the next month. And I'm going to give you a question today to answer whenever you feel like. If you're from Atala, you've already heard it, so you probably already know the answer. So if you can't find the answer, you can find somebody from Atala or find me. The question is, can an axe swim? Can an axe swim? It's in the King James Bible. It's in all of them. So, look it up. Just spend a little time looking. If you can't find it, just let me know. I'll try to do better. But it's an interesting question. And so I hope everyone here has participated in some activities. If you haven't participated in some activities, try to participate in some before you leave. Try to meet somebody you have never met before this year and make a friend of them. So next year when you see them, you can smile and enjoy yourself. The more friends you make, the more people from other states, other areas. You get to know, might get to visit them sometime if you're traveling and going places. When I go to Atala, I stay with my buddy John a lot instead of having to drive up and back. So we've been traveling around together since 1981, I think. So I hope everyone is enjoying the feast, and I hope you enjoy even more. I hope I know all the sermons have been good. I've enjoyed them. I hope I can carry on the ideas that are being presented this week. What I'd like to talk to you today about is test. From the time we are born, we start having tests. Learning to get up and crawl, learning to get up and walk, learning to talk. Mom gets upset if you say dad first. You fail that test. You're supposed to say mom first. And we go through those tests. We get in school and take all kind of tests. Some of them, some of them are bad. I always told my kids, it didn't matter whether you agreed with the teacher or not, you had to give her the answer to the question she asked, the answer she's looking for. Well, the scriptures is not that way. We know what the answer is. We just got to be there. When you're called, one of the first questions or first test is, will you keep the Sabbath? Will you keep the Sabbath? And sometimes people have difficulty with that. I never had any difficulty. All my employers, every once in a while they would ask me. I think in the last 40 years, I probably worked 5 or 6 Sabbaths because I thought it was an emergency and needed something fixed. Some of it storm and stuff like that. But I didn't have to work the Sabbath. They all realized that I would come in on Sunday and work. So, but if you have difficulties with the Sabbath, just keep going with it. Talk to your boss, man. I've heard people say, well, I never tell them. I don't tell them about it. And then you get caught when they really want you to work, and it's like, I'm not working. Well, you're supposed to work. That was the way you were hired. Well, when I was hired, they up front that I didn't work the Sabbath. I don't work the Sabbath. Like I said, I have worked a few emergencies, but so that's your first test. Have you passed that test? Are you doing well on that test? I've been doing this 40 something years, right around 40 years. And I still, occasionally something will come up and say, well, would you go do this? No, I can't do it tomorrow. Not going to be there tomorrow. I'm a volunteer fireman, and they're all the time trying to do something on Saturday. And so I'm not going to be there. I'm just not going to be there. So, and then you run into other things that you get tested on, and how you react to it. The holy days, holy days is a little different. That's during the week sometimes, and you have to take off an extra day. Save some vacation days or just take days off. And you have to make up your mind that you're going to do it. That's the first step. It's like, God told me to do this, I got to do it. It's a test. Clean and unclean meats, the 10 Commandments, all of those different things. And you think, every year I think, what was my test this year? What was the thing that I was tested the most on this year? Did I pass the test? And I can tell you over the years, I have failed a few tests. I have failed a few tests. One test I took at work, I failed it 3 times. It was a certification test, and I failed it 3 times. It's like, but it was interesting, that test. There was like 25 people in the company took the test, and one question on that test, nobody in the company got the question right. So the test is not correct, in my opinion. You're not testing somebody's knowledge if nobody can answer one question right. And God doesn't do it that way. He gives us the book. He tells us what we're supposed to do. He shows us what we're supposed to do. Makes it up to us to follow that. We have to continue with that and keep doing that. And with all the things going on in the last couple of years, when they first come with, we're all going to have to be tested. And it's like, tested for what? I'm not sick. Why would I go take a test if I'm not sick? You know, why would I go take a test if I'm not sick? You know, there's no reason for it. If you're sick, you know, maybe there is a reason to go test it so that you don't give it to anybody else. But you look at all the different things, and, you know, I've heard a couple people, and a couple of people have asked me about Psalms 91. I don't think I'll get it. I just don't believe I'll get it. And I thought, nah, I'm not seeing it that way. I'm not seeing it that way. I look at people like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and, you know, David, Job, Paul. They all got tested. Every one of them was tested. They all had to go through tests. And, you know, and each one of them reached a point where they didn't have to take a test anymore, I believe. And it says that on Abraham. It says, now I know. Now I know. So he was tested. And God will protect us. You know, sometimes our protection is not exactly like we think it would be. If you look at Paul and some of the things that happened to him, you know, he was stoned multiple times. It wasn't a test. If you get up and go and do it again, you know, but he was stoned. But it didn't kill him. They left him for dead multiple times. But he didn't die. And he got up and kept doing it. He kept going right back to it. That was a test. It was a test of him. How I react, what we do when we're tested. You know, how our faith, as we mentioned yesterday, our faith gets stronger every time we pass a test. When we don't pass that test, we kind of back away from it a little bit. You know, I don't know if I'm gonna make it into the kingdom or not. You know, I don't know. You know, when you get to that test, and you finally say, "Oh, all right, God's told me I got to do this. I'm going to do it." You say, "Oh, okay. Maybe I can have hope of making it into the kingdom. You know, maybe I can do better. Maybe I can help." If you turn to Genesis chapter 12, I want to show you an example of what I was talking about with Abraham, and let you think about Abraham just a little bit. I changed Bibles this week, and it's a little hard to turn the pages like I want to. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Come on. There we go. It says, "Now the Eternal said unto Abram, Get thee out of this country and from the kindred, from thy father's house and the land that I will show you." Sorry, my phone's doing something. "And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing." So God's telling him, if you get up and get out of this country and go where I tell you to, I'm going to make you a great nation. And he had the faith to do it. But there's other parts of it, because if you look in verse 4, it says, "Abraham departed as the Eternal had spoken unto him, and Lot with him, and Abram was 75 years old." Now you think about, in my lifetime, I've moved many times. I moved a good bit with my mom and dad, and I've moved several times since I've been grown. I moved to Panama City in 2004. And since then, I moved up a little further north here and got a little more land. So, you know, I hate moving. And Abraham, at 75 years old, I'm almost 65. I'd hate to think about, thank you. I'd hate to think about now getting up and moving to a totally different state, or to a whole new area. You know, all the things that changes. You know, if you're working, finding a job that you can have that you can keep the Sabbath. You know, if you're, all those different things that Abraham had to think about at 75 years old. You know, and it makes it a little different to me. That's a pretty good test, I think. So get up, get your stuff together, and let's go. We got I really think that's a pretty good test of his belief in God. And I think it's an example of the way we should feel and the way we should do. You know, I've never really been asked to move, you know, for the church or anything like that. But, you know, it's if you were asked, would you get up and move because you were asked to move to another area? In Genesis, 24 years later, 25 years later in that neighborhood, in Genesis 17, so he's 100 years old now. We don't have anybody here that's 100 years old. I'm pretty sure of that. You know, I think some people in their 80s, but, you know, nobody's 100. So he's 100 years old. And my feelings on this is Abraham kind of failed this test right to start with. Him and Sarah didn't react the way God, I think, wanted them to react when they were told. In Genesis 17, verse 1, it says, "And Abram was 99 years old, and the Eternal appeared before Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be perfect. I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly." Multiply thee exceedingly. Abraham doesn't have any kids, and he's 100 years old, and God's telling him, your family is fixing to grow. And I really think, he said, you know, I'm 100 years old. Sarah's 90-something years old. And we're going to have kids? I've got a little doubt. You know, I think Abraham had a little doubt. But he finally got it. He finally passed the test. You know, he had a son with Hagar to start with, thinking he was going to do better. And God said, no, that's not the way I planned it. That's not the way I wanted it. I want you to have Isaac, and your lineage, all of your children will come from Isaac. And so he finally got it. He finally passed that test. And then 13 years later, in Genesis 22, now think about this. He's 113 years old, but he lived to be 175. I think that's right. I believe it. Yeah. In Genesis 22, it says, and it came to pass after these things, God did tempt Abraham and tempted him, tested him. Right here it tells you it's a test. Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, behold, here am I. And I've always wanted to do that. I always wanted to say, here am I. And I never can remember to do it. I never can remember when somebody calls your name to say, here am I. I've always wanted to do that. But I had an incident just before I quit work in June. I was working away on an engine, and I would have swore he walked up behind me and said, Terry. And I looked around and it's like, I'm here. And there was nobody there. So I have no idea. I had something in my mind, I guess, or somebody walked by and said it, kept going, and I never did find them. But, you know, it's like, I always wanted to say, here am I. And he said, take now thy son, thy only son Isaac, and who thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee. Think about that. Your only son, the one God said is going to be the lineage to all of the kingdom, he said, go sacrifice him. Now, you know, Abraham did what he was told, but I have no thought that he didn't have some doubt. You know, I know that it says, you know, everybody says, well, he knew Isaac would be resurrected. He'd never seen a resurrection. I may not have ever even heard of a resurrection. I don't know. But he did exactly what God told him to do. And like I said, if you read on down through it, when he drew the knife, the angel stopped him, and he said, now I know that you'll do. And it says that, so that was his final test. I don't think he was arrested after that. That's just my belief. You know, if you want to talk about it, we can. But, you know, I believe that was his final test. Sarah died, and Isaac grew up. Isaac and Ishmael got along with each other. You know, in all the stuff that went on, they finally got together. and got together. But Abraham remarried and had 4 or 5 more kids. I can't remember right this second. But they had 4, but he was never tested again. It's never brought up any test that we can see. He was never tested after that. And so, you look at it and think about, I've never been asked to move. I've never, I had a child before I came into church, and I picked up a few stepchildren since then, and so I've never been asked to sacrifice anything. Never been asked to sacrifice anything. So Abraham was tested way more than I've ever been tested. And I think if you'll measure your test, Abraham was tested way more than you've been tested. And he passed. He passed. And I'm not going to turn there, but I'm going to mention Job. Job was a righteous person. God even bragged on him to Satan. And, I've never heard it mentioned before, but I believe that was during a holy day when Satan and God got together and they talked about it. I believe that was a holy day here on earth, because I don't think Satan ever went back to heaven. I think he was cast out, but he was still wandering around here on earth, and God saw him at a holy day service. I think he'll show up at holy day services and test us. I know, testing, this year, and I know a family that every year, years ago, back in the 80s and 90s, every year, their trailer lights never worked when it was time to go to the feast. They could fix them during the year, and their trailer lights never worked. They were tested. I'm just not going to go. My lights don't work. They didn't ever say that. Got to fix them. We go. Went to the feast. But I think, Job was, God was consulting with Satan there, and he said, have you ever considered my son, my servant Job? And Job was tempted way more than any of us, was tested. All the things that he lost, all the things that happened to him. But when, it all started out, God said, he's my servant. He was a servant of God. You look at in Matthew chapter 4, verse 1, we're talking a little about Jesus being tested. You really don't think about it. He was perfect, but he was also perfect because he was tempted just like we have been tempted. Maybe a little more, maybe a little harder. Matthew 4:1 says, then was Jesus led up by the Spirit unto the wilderness and to be tempted of the devil. We've all heard all these stories and we've all read them. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterwards he was hungry. I think that's a little bit of an understatement. I can't imagine fasting that long. I know it's possible. I believe, I know it's possible. I know when I was younger, the prisoners in Ireland fasted and made it 60 and 70 or 80 days fasting. And now some of them drank water and some of them didn't. But can live fasting 40 days. So, it's a temptation. It's a test. Can you do it? And each, like I say, all of us have read this story and we've heard this story over and over, but Jesus always answered with a scripture. He didn't say, well, I believe, I believe this is the way it is. He said, no, he answered with a scripture. He always answered with scripture. In the temptation, his mind went back to the scriptures. Always went back to the scriptures. And something to remember at the end of it all, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, something, whenever you're in a situation, it's like, I'm not doing so well at this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to act, or I don't know, I want to do this, but I don't know if I should do this. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. Well, I should have used my older Bible today. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, there has no temptation, no test taken you but such as is common to man. Everything we have to go through, other people have had to go through it too. Every one of us. All of us grow our faith from those temptations or those tests. All of us do. But God is faithful and will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able. At no time will he tempt you to the point that you're going to fail. He's not going to intentionally let you fail. You may fail and have to do it again through this test again. Like I said, the Sabbath is one of the big ones. He may tempt you, say, well, I'm not sure he really believes in keeping the Sabbath. Maybe we ought to tempt him just a little bit and see, boss man comes out, can you work Saturday? Nope, can't work Saturday. Can't do it. Can't do it. But as you continue on here, it says, but with temptation also makes a way to escape that you may be able to bear it. A way to escape that you may be able to bear it. Now think about that. And, think about all the things that happened to Paul. Think about how many different ways he escaped. Yeah, at one time he was let down in a basket outside the wall to keep from being stoned again. And think about, how does that affect us? What would you do if you thought the whole group of people just come to the door, knocking on the door, and they're going to take me out and stone me? What would you do? In Acts 28, verse 1, we're going to read just a little bit about Paul and how he was tested and how God actually protected him, but not beforehand, a little bit after. In Acts 28, it says, when they were escaped, when they knew that the island was called Melita, and the barbarous people showed us no little kindness, and they kindled a fire and received us everyone because of the presence of rain, and it was cold. They had been shipwrecked, had to swim to this island. He was protected, right? He survived it. He had to swim. He was tested a little bit. He survived, swam to the island, and they built a fire with some help. And verse 3, it says, and when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them to the fire, there came a fire out of the heat fastened on his head. He was protected, right? His faith, he had faith because he was protected. But he got snake bit. It was a test for the other people to say, hey, he survived. He was protected. But I bet that didn't feel good getting bit by a snake. I bet it's like, whoa, this is bad. This is bad. And I have a small idea about that. Several years ago, I was in the barn, and I walked in the barn, and there was a snake in the pen that the chickens were in. And most of its body was sticking out of the pen. And I assumed because it had swallowed the chicken, it just couldn't get out of the pen, and its head was sticking out of the pen. Well, when I reached in the pen to grab it, it bit me. And I knew what kind of snake it was before I reached in the pen. I would have been more careful if it had been a poisonous snake. But I was just assuming that snake's head was sticking out, and I was going to drag it back in to get it out of the pen, but it wasn't. His head was still inside the pen, and he bit me. It didn't really break in, but it was like, I just got snake bit. And it makes you think, how do you react? How do you react? How would you react if you had been snake bit? How did Paul react? What was his thoughts? Whoa. He knew it was a poisonous snake because they all told him it was a poisonous snake. But he survived. And first they said, he's going to die. He's definitely going to die. And then when he didn't, in verse 6, How about they looked when he should have been swollen, fallen down dead suddenly, but after that they looked, and a great while no harm come to him, and they changed their minds and said that he was a man of God. Think about that whenever you're tested the next time, how you react. Happens. God will protect you, but sometimes that protection is not exactly like you thought it would be. So, just think about that, and think about all the tests that you've had to go through, and hope at some point you have passed your final test. Can you pass your final test? It says endure to the end. Endure to the end. That means that we could be tested right up to the end. Who knows? Who knows? But, we have the faith, as was mentioned yesterday, and we have the belief, as was brought up in Peter, that we can do these things. And we will do these things. And we will continue to do these things. We will continue to be tested. Continue to be tested. And, as you look at the tribulation, some of those tests may get pretty strong. But he's never going to test you beyond what you can stand. Just remember that. And keep passing the test. And if you fail one, go back and take it again.
Thank you, Terry. All right, brethren, we'll stand for one more song here. We're going to sing page 19, Come Thou Almighty King. After which we'll have the second part of the split sermon by Mr. Mike Albert. Spirit of holiness, our prayer